Today's demonstration is making chocolate truffles for Mother's Day. In order to make chocolate truffles, we need to start off by making a proper chocolate ganache. The chocolate that we often use for making ganache is melting chocolate, which actually melts at 115 degrees Fahrenheit. This is also known as couverture, or sometimes sold as chips as pistoles. The chocolate that is easier for most people to buy in the store, however, are like Nestle Toll House chips, which, as you know from making chocolate chip cookies, don't melt so easily in the oven. If you hold it in your hand, it keeps its shape, and it keeps its shape when it's baked in a cookie. If you're to do this with regular melting chocolate, this would melt very easily. Because of this higher melting point of the chocolate chips we're using for this ganache, we're going to have to melt our chocolate in a certain way. First off, we need to talk about ratios and how we're going to combine chocolate chips with some cream later on. The amount of chocolate that we're using for this recipe is 2 cups of chips, which is actually 12 ounces on a scale. If you were to look at this measuring cup for 2 cups, it would say 16 ounces, but that has to do with liquids. Because chocolate chips have a certain shape, they actually take up more space. Now, if you drop chocolate chips into water, you'll see they're sinking, which means they're very dense. But when you have 2 cups of chips with the space in between, they actually will only weigh 12 ounces on a scale. If you have a scale available, go ahead and measure out 12 ounces of chips. If all you have is measuring cups, get yourself 2 cups of chips, and then you will find that it will be 12 ounces on a scale. Now, I like to pour these chocolate chips into a microwavable bowl because there may come a time in the melting process that I do have to put this in the microwave. However, I'm not a fan of using a microwave for melting chocolate at any time because microwaves tend to heat things unevenly. I especially don't prefer to use a microwave for heating chocolate chips because of the fact that we will get hot spots and sometimes melt the chocolate and burn it in spots. Now we're getting ready to add our cream to a saucepan, which is going to be brought to a boil, and that will be enough heat to melt these chocolate chips, which have a higher melting point. The ratio for this thick ganache or stiff ganache is going to be 2 parts chocolate to 1 part cream. So if we started with 12 ounces of chocolate, 2 cups, then I need 6 ounces of cream, which is 3/4 a cup by volume. This cream could be heated in a microwave, but again, you may find that your cream will get overheated and boil over, so I tend to want to do this on a stove. I'm going to bring this to more than a simmer, actually a boil, which will help remove some of the water from the cream, which makes it combine with the chocolate better. We will now take this to the stove and heat this cream up and bring it to a boil and finish that in time lapse. And we're back in real time. Once our cream has come to a boil, we're going to pour this over the chocolate chips in our microwave safe bowl. I want to pour this in a slow drizzle so it covers the chocolate chips, and hopefully I've picked a container that will be just covered to the top of the chocolate chips. Now, to help trap the heat, I'm going to put a piece of saran wrap on top and push it down to the surface, and then we're going to let this hang out for a few minutes. This is going to help to make sure that the heat is trapped inside so that hopefully we don't have to heat this up any further in the microwave. And we're back in real time. The hot cream is sitting on top of the chocolate chips for about 5 minutes, and now it's time to incorporate the 2 items together. I'm going to take the saran wrap off and dispose of it, and go ahead and mix this in with a tool. I'm using a metal whisk. You could certainly use a rubber spatula. I just like how the whisk will get into the corners. If you have available, though, I'd really recommend that you add in a tablespoon of corn syrup to this mixture before you start incorporating. The corn syrup has a different sugar structure in terms of glucose and fructose than does the chocolate. And the addition of this different type of sugar will help the chocolate not to create larger crystals in its structure once it cools down. Those larger crystals will lead to a non-smooth mouthfeel. So higher quality chocolates will use more labor as mixing, as you're seeing, and also some ingredients that might be a little bit pricier than other add-ins like extra cream and extra butter. So once we add in this corn syrup and mix this, if your ganache is coming together, you should see that it gets very, very shiny. It becomes very thick and viscous, and at this point it's nice and stabilized. So once this has been stabilized, you can consider the option of adding in some other flavorings. And some of those flavorings might be alcohol based in the form of liqueurs of different natures. So some people might add up to a couple tablespoons of Grand Marnier for orange, Chambord for raspberry, Kahlua for coffee, some of the almond liqueurs. I'm just putting a half teaspoon of vanilla in to mix this through, just to add a little extra flavoring. If you found that your chocolate was not completely melted at this point, take out your tool that is metal or your rubber spatula, put it in the microwave for 15 to 30 seconds. Hopefully it all comes together. And when it does, it's time to cool it down. Now moisture is an enemy of melted chocolate, so I'm going to be putting some saran wrap on top of this to keep moisture off, because this is going to go into the refrigerator for a good 3 to 4 hours for it to cool down and become a firm ganache, which we're going to roll into balls in a little while and then put some coatings on the outside. This is my ganache after it's been in the refrigerator for about 4 hours. I take off the saran wrap. I want to see how soft it is and how much it's set up. I'd rather work with a firmer ganache than too soft a ganache. The fact that I'm pushing on this with my finger, leaving a slight indentation, means that it's firm enough for me to work with, but I would like it to chill a little bit longer if I could. If you find that the ganache is too hard, by the time you have it out in room temp and work it around with your hands, it is going to soften and cooperate. Again, I'd rather it be a little bit firmer than too soft. Some options we have could include a melon baller. This is what's known as a number 20 scoop. There are 20 scoops this size to a quart of product. Those are pretty large truffles. We have a number 40 scoop, the orange handled. This is my more preferred size of a truffle. I'll get 40 of these to a quart of any product. If you don't have any of these scoopers at home, you could certainly use a soup spoon that you would just dig in to pull out what looks to be about a level tablespoon. Put it into your hands and then roll it down into a ball. I would really recommend you not use your measuring spoons for digging this out, because you might find that you're going to bend up your spoons quite a bit. Just roll out the truffle into a round ball. Set it off onto a sheet pan that you have wax paper or parchment paper. Now, I have gloves on, and this is done for two reasons. One is trying to keep my hands out of the chocolate just for sanitary reasons. Two, it's kind of keeping some of the heat of my hands away from the chocolate. The softer the chocolate is, the harder it is to work with. And three, it's going to make for a real easy cleanup at the end of this rolling process. And so, again, the process is going to be scoop out the amount of ganache that you want and roll it into your hands, handling it as little as you can just to form it into a ball. Place it down on your covered surface. It can be helpful if you have two sets of hands to do this, one who is going to scoop it out and one who's going to do the rolling. We're finishing this up in time lapse, and I think we're going to end up with 27 or 28 portions of stiff ganache at the end. Now, what the video may not show is that quite a few of these balls that I rolled towards the end of the process got pretty softened from the heat of my hands and just being out in the kitchen for a while. So you can put this back into the refrigerator for a good 20-30 minutes to firm it up, or maybe 5 to 10 minutes blast chill in your freezer. Now we're getting ready to actually roll our truffles into our coatings. The classic coating on most truffles is just cocoa powder. So I'm going to get myself half a cup of cocoa powder in through a sifter and sift this to get rid of all the lumps and make sure it's nice and fluffy. So we're going to be rolling truffles around in this. This is quite a bit more cocoa than we're going to need for the amount of truffles we're doing, but I'd rather not run out of cocoa in the middle of this process because my hands are going to get messy with the melting chocolate. Any cocoa powder that we have left over at the end, we can put into a Ziploc bag for later use. Another coating I'm doing today is coconut. And then finally, a coating that I may have to be a little bit cautious with are walnuts. And I say be cautious with that because of nut allergies. So I like to take chopped walnuts, take walnuts and chop them up super fine, and then sift out a lot of the fine dust that kind of comes on the cutting board. I'll use that walnut dust in like a bread or a smoothie just to add a little extra protein. But I like my walnuts to be chopped and then I'm actually going to have a separate bowl that I'm going to put the finished truffles into so I can keep these truffles that have nuts for nut allergies away from the others. And I'm going to do that rolling at the end so I don't possibly transfer nuts onto truffles for people who are trying not to eat those. Alright, so the process. Get yourself your ganache ball rolled around in your hand, being as gentle as you can with it, not trying to smash it, kind of more in your fingertips as you're rolling it, just trying to make a nice round uniform ball, rolling it around lightly in the cocoa powder, and then picking it up, letting some of the cocoa powder fall back into your container, and place it onto your sheet pan that you've lined with parchment paper. I'm just going to do this one at a time. You might be a little bit impatient, want to roll 3 or 4 in those at a time, but they tend to get stuck with each other and make a bigger mess. Just take your time, adding one ball at a time, rolling around as quickly as you can, lifting up gently, handling it as minimally as you can. We're going to end up doing a few more of these in time lapse. And these actually truffle bases are what I would potentially put into the fridge for extra chilling to possibly dip into properly tempered chocolate for chocolate coating if we could. I'm transitioning to coconut now, and you can see that because I had cocoa powder still on my gloved hands. The first truffle that I'm rolling in coconut is not really sticking to the truffle. So when you transition, make sure your hands are kind of clean of the cocoa powder. Get yourself a ganache ball that has no cocoa powder on it, and you'll see that the coconut will stick a lot better. So again, just picking one up, moving around loosely. There's more coconut in there than the actual number of truffles I intend to make for this flavor today. But these coconuts shreddings can get put into a bag and used for another use in your baking. So I think we're doing like 6 or so of the coconut truffles today. And then finally, it's our walnut truffle. Now, I have this separate bowl, and if I were truly dealing with someone that had a severe food allergy, I wouldn't want this walnut rolled truffle to come anywhere near the other truffles. I am trying to isolate just one hand that's touching the walnuts. But what's nice about the walnuts we're using today is that they're from Mariani nut here in Winters, and they don't grow peanuts, processed peanuts in the same plant. So if someone truly just has an allergy to peanuts and we're working with walnuts, there should not be a concern. If you buy walnuts from stores that work in large factories where they process all kinds of nuts on that machinery and equipment, then you're at greater risk of a nut allergy if you're allergic to peanuts. So these are some walnuts just getting rolled in dark chocolate. Your imagination can take over as far as what it is you're rolling your ganache balls in. This could be a Heath bar that's been in a freezer, frozen and broken into small chunks, a Butterfinger bar, any coating that you want, you can roll your ganache ball in. Just play with it, have fun, and be creative. When the truffles are finished, they should be transferred to a smaller container and stored in the refrigerator. The fact that we use cream in this ganache mix means that these aren't so stable left out on the countertop. You're going to find the eating experience to be more enjoyable if the chocolate is a little bit firmer coming out of the fridge. To find more cooking demonstrations on our YouTube channel, find us at Culinary Winters HS. Our Instagram handle is #CulinaryWHS. There are more photos, cooking experiences, and a chance for you to tag us if you follow along and make the things at home that we're making at school. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy.